Rhythm of War, Book 4 in the Stormlight Archive. For some people, it's their favorite of the series. Some absolutely hated it. Where do Zach and I fall? I think you'll find out today.
Hi there, and welcome to Fantasy for the Ages, the show where a father and son sit down and talk about fantasy books. I'm the son of that equation, Zach.
And of course, I'm the father then, Jim. We are glad to have you with us today. If this is the first episode of Fantasy for the Ages you've stumbled upon, well, good news. We've got over 1,000 different videos that you can peruse. This one in particular is our fourth in a series because we've been reviewing the books of the Stormlight Archive, looking ahead to Wind and Truth, Book 5, that comes out, well, now in just about a month and a half. So we're just going to go full spoiler talking about the various aspects of Rhythm of War today. If you haven't read it, where have you been? But this is not the episode to watch. Before we get into the content, I want to give a shout out again to our sponsor, Fantasy for the Ages sponsor, Your Paper Quest. There are notes down in our show notes all about this. It's an opportunity to get some self-published books that just come to your mailbox every month, every other month, or every 3 months. You get to pick what works for you. All sorts of genres. I've been enjoying the books that have showed up, and you might want to check it out and see if it's for you. Our Fantasy for the Ages viewers have the opportunity to try it out at a discount. Just put Fantasy20 down in the promo code and you get 20% off. Good deal. All right, let's get into this. But Zach, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. I helped out some friends that were moving here yesterday, so I did manual labor, and I'm a little tired.
You use more muscles than you're used to using?
Yeah, like I don't usually carry couches. Yesterday I did. So it happens. But no, it's good. Always love being around friends, helping friends, and so that's an exciting time. But ready to talk books here now. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. It's been a really busy week. I am enjoying this beautiful sunny day that is like the last day of beautiful fall. Because the rain is supposed to move in a couple of hours and then rain the rest of the day, which is more normal fall in the Pacific Northwest.
Speaking of beautiful fall, so last week I was in Eureka Springs, Arkansas.
Eureka!
For a wedding.
I'm sure they've heard that before.
That is beautiful. I was pleasantly surprised because I don't know a lot about Arkansas. If you're from Arkansas, fantastic. But up in the Ozarks, you get mountainous stuff, beautiful fall colors. I forgot that fall is as pretty as it can be.
Nice. My experience with Arkansas is driving through Arkansas. I've never had a reason to go to Arkansas.
Yeah.
Glad to know it is a pretty state. There has to be a reason people live there, right?
Yeah. Presumably. And ideally, it's not just because it's cheap. But if it is, cool, I guess.
It's got to be cheaper than it is living out here in the Pacific Northwest.
I don't know.
Your mom and I were out at the coast this weekend, and yesterday on our way back, we stopped at a few little places along the sea to just, explore. And one of them had a realty, and we looked. Oh yeah, you can get a cute little cottage right on the coast.
500
square feet.
1,100. Okay.
1,100 square feet. $1.5 million. Yeah. Wow. No. Okay, enough about us. Let's talk about the content.
Yes, that's what we're here for.
As we said, Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson is the fourth book, a pivotal installment in this epic fantasy series, the Stormlight Archive. But what's it about? There's so much packed into this book. I will say this is like maybe my favorite, or it's a close second. I really enjoy Oathbringer, but Rhythm of War was right there with it. And I know not everybody agrees with me. Your initial take, Sam?
There are definitely some sections that, I understand people's gripes with it and why they don't like these sections. Me, with both my various sciencey background and my interest in the Cosmere as a whole, not just the Stormlight Archive, I thought those sections were actually very strong.
Yes.
But they require you to kind of be bought into the Cosmere on a larger scale for them to be as strong as they are. So I understand the grievances. I did really love this book.
Brandon Sanderson is on the record saying it's not necessary to read the rest of his Cosmere books to enjoy the Stormlight Archive. But at the same time, you're 100% right. It's one of the points we'll talk about today. If you haven't read the rest of the Cosmere, you're not getting as much as you could out of this book. And it does definitely elevate the reading experience to have all the rest in your background. And I had got the rest of it before I did my reread. So I definitely enjoyed this far more the second time, even though I loved it the first time. One of the key elements of this book is mental health and trauma and its impact on a person. That's been a theme running through the Stormlight Archive, but it again is big here. Two in particular aspects that are on display is Kaladin and his struggle, but also Navani Colin, as she's grieving. Okay. She has to deal with, well, let's go one at a time. Let's do Kaladin first.
Sad boy.
Okay. Kaladin, we've got him, sad boy, you say, almost emo, right? He's
severely depressed and dealing with intense PTSD. But in this book, he also is going to try and help others through some of that, which I think is really awesome.
Oh, yeah. Very, very healing for him. Not that everything's made perfect, but I appreciate how Dalinar recognizes the need to pull Kaladin off the front lines. That this is a person who is dealing with, I should say PTSD. He is struggling now. He can't bring his best all the time. All the people around him see it, and he can't see it. He just sees himself soldiering on because he needs to be there for everybody. But he needs to be there for himself.
And that's really part of the problem with Kaladin is that he wants to save everyone around him so much. He can't accept that he can't be there to save everyone, to do everything. And especially as things grow and get bigger, and he's getting more and more command. He's getting more people under him as windrunners who are doing all of this. And he's still not able to fully accept and grasp that this is war and people under his command are gonna die whether he's able to be there or not. And that's really hard.
One of his journeys throughout the books has been this need to protect people, to save people, and the constant cycle of failure that he cannot protect people. And it's just built. He's never been able to reach a point where finally I can save everybody. Because as you said, it's war. You can't.
You can't.
And he can't let go of that.
Or at least he can't fully to the extent that he needs to for most of this book.
And so, of course, he is pulled off the front lines and he spends time with his father, working again as a, apprentice surgeon. It's still not providing all that he needs. And that's where he ends up with this, starting a counseling session, a group therapy, he gets into something that they have no concept of in this world. It's basically stated pretty clearly, some people just have mental issues and just need to be sent somewhere and kept from hurting themselves.
And it's really heartbreaking, but also something that, it parallels how mental health has been treated historically in our world. Where when you don't know how to fix someone, you just lock them away and hide them from the rest of the world. And Kaladin, through his eyes and through his actions, we see that kind of brought to light and be like, hey, let's do something else. Let's help people.
I appreciate when Kaladin recognizes that if not for just certain circumstances that happen to draw him in, suck him in, random chance, he'd be in some dark room somewhere. He's no better off than the people that he finds and he starts trying to help.
That being said, I want to give credit where credit's due. It's not because of random chance. It's because of Syl. There is a name to that random chance in this case, and her name is Sylphrena.
Now, as chance would have it, Kaladin, having been pulled off the front lines, is in a perfect position to make a difference when the tower falls. And we'll be talking more about that later. and certainly where Kaladin's able to go as we get later into this book, and some of the best finishing moments of any of these stories, any story that I've read. Wow, powerful stuff. But we'll get back to that later.
Yes.
Let's talk about now Navani.
Okay.
Okay, she's dealing with grief, trauma that goes back a ways. We come to understand Navani was not happy in her former marriage. Okay, she had picked the brother that seemed to be the right choice for her, but truly it wasn't the one that she actually loved. She made the power move. Okay, Dalinar was the one that really she would have loved to have married, but Gavilar was the safer choice, the smarter choice.
A whole like How I Met Your Mother ending. If you haven't watched that show, sorry for the spoiler, but like we spend a whole bunch of time working on one thing and one people, and they're supposed to end up together, and they do. But then it's like, but actually, once that person's passed, you realize that that whole time you spent was really connecting with this other person, and maybe go with them now. Hate the ending of that show, by the way. I think it's dumb, but it works in this book.
So we get flashbacks in this book to understand Navani's past, her journey. And so things were actually pretty good with Gavilar for a while, but then he's going down a different path and shutting her out. Okay, so she was feeling more and more isolated, more and more alone, really, not happy with him. And then he's assassinated, which leaves her with a little bit of survivor guilt almost,
It's really hard when it's like the last conversation we had was us fighting. And I was like, I wish you dead almost, but not really. But then it's like, oh, he's
now
dead.
He's dead. Yeah. Ooh. So she's had to work through that trauma. Now we've gotten to a point where she's lost her son too. So she's got the grief she's carrying with Elokar's death. And now is she also partly losing Dalinar? Because he's off doing things. He has purpose. He has a mission. And she's trapped in the tower. She's stuck.
And
a hard place for her.
She's never connected with Gaston very well, but is understanding and seeing she's got purpose. She's got stuff she's actively doing and is needed. And Navani feels like she's just there.
Yes. So this book certainly sees Navani come to grips with her own feelings of inadequacy. What is my purpose? She likes to see herself as a scholar, but not really. She knows really she just supports scholars because it's her interest, her hobby. And yet we get to see her find her own mettle here in this book as she does show her brain works like scholars' brains work. She may not be as smart as others, may not know as much, but what she accomplishes?
She goes through experiments, she makes discoveries, she successfully does accomplish things. And their implications are really big.
Yes. So when Navani and Dalinar will be, reunited, she is a changed woman. Okay, she has found her purpose.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about how much she's a changed woman, we should probably mention that she's also a bondsmith now.
She is quite the match for Dalinar now. She can hold her own.
This is the part of Navani's story so far that I liked the least, because it is a bonding of necessity and circumstance for both parties.
Yes.
But it's very much not the bond that I wanted here.
Really?
Absolutely. And I think we were on the path, absolutely, for what the bond that I did want to happen, but circumstance forced it to not be able to happen.
I liked this bonding. And so that's what I want to talk about as our second arc, is Navani's whole journey through here. Her scientific discoveries, the work she had been doing before that leads to what she is able to accomplish now. Her focus had been, coming along, working with Fabrials. Okay, that's her shtick, her thing. That's what she was supporting scholars to do. Exploring, and as we come to find out, discovering new things to do with Stormlight that way back when nobody had figured this out. these ways to pair and split and be able to have conjoined stones, Fabrial things.
Sure.
Are pretty cool. I mean, she's
absolutely
done some groundbreaking discoveries, which does attract the attention of Raboniel when the tower falls.
Is that how you say that, or is that how you say that?
That's how the audiobook says it.
Interesting.
Raboniel.
I've never heard it.
Yeah.
I've only ever read it. So I was like, huh.
How in your head?
I just put the emphasis differently. It was Raboniel for me.
I see. Well, I mean, I can see how you'd say that.
But like, if that's the correct thing, I'm down for that. I just didn't know.
Raboniel is a great character. Fascinating insights into who these fused are and what makes them tick.
Love in this book, because we've gotten glimpses in previous books, but this is the first one that we really dive as deeply into Parshendi, Parshman, and Fused in their entirety, and see some of these dynamics, and see people in each of these groups for the people they are, not just for the group that they represent.
Yeah, definitely. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about the actual discoveries about Stormlight and Voidlight.
At least not today.
Right, not today. But it's clear there will be far-reaching consequences.
Yeah.
The things that really it's both Navani and Raboniel working together that discovers these things. It's mostly Navani, but then Raboniel who's able to make some additional connections that are going to go on and on and on.
We learned some wonderful, terrifying things about investiture for the rest of time, because this is going to get out there and it's going to spread.
Yeah. We'll come back, I think, and talk a little bit more about that before we're done here. But let's talk about Raboniel a little bit more.
Yeah.
Raboniel is one of the fused, one of the ones that's in charge of this, of the tower of Yorthiru now. Mm-hmm. And she's a scholar. Okay, she's not a warrior, truly. She's a scholar. And she puts Navani to work, doing some things, kind of mostly what Navani would have wanted to work on anyways. But Raboniel sees applications that might be good for her own purpose, which we find out later is a devastating purpose.
Yeah, hear me out. Raboniel is the Stormlight Archive's version of Ishamael.
Ooh, I like that. It's not quite one-to-one, but I see
we've got enough parallels, especially with some of that nihilism of part of the purpose that they've got.
It's got to end. It's got to end. Yes. And of course, that's driven by what already happened to her own child. And seeing her child's mind just gone, but never able to die. We need to find a way to end this. Yeah.
Because most individuals and things just aren't built to live forever.
Raboniel ends up being complex. We love good complex characters. It is hard to define her as good or bad.
She's bad. No, she's got complicated stuff that goes and
she's on the bad guy's side. Absolutely.
Well, here's the thing.
What?
I don't view her as being bad for being on the bad guy's side. I view her as being bad for the way that she uses and manipulates other people toward her end. It is always a little bit underhanded. It is always to other people's detriment.
When push comes to shove, at the end of things, Navani is only still alive because of Raboniel.
A good action can be done by someone that I still view as evil, and evil actions can be done by people that are good. And that line is very gray, and it's intentionally gray throughout the Stormlight Archive for a lot of characters. However, I put Raboniel on the side of no.
Well, it was true time and again when we start to kind of appreciate Raboniel is doing the way she's kind of showing some kindness, showing some understanding, and then twist, and it all comes in evil and bad again. Yeah, for the most part, kind of a dark character. But there are some redeeming qualities, not full redemption.
Yeah, it definitely does good things. Certainly there are times and ways, and in certain situations, I might view them as a good actor, but I don't think Raboniel did enough to be considered redeemed in my eyes.
There you go. Since we kind of talked about Raboniel, let's go a little further in and talk about the fused as a whole,
Yes, please.
as well as Odium. We'll kind of hit on both of these
Okay.
here now, because we're getting next level in our understandings of what's going on here. Raboniel and the fused as a whole, I mean, they're immortal. How does that? I mean, what's the deal? What's the deal here?
What, like, effectively soul bound to a god is the best way that I can, like, explain it roughly. And being like, they're not allowed to die. When they die, they just get kind of like grabbed by power and eventually thrown back into other bodies.
Right? They must have thought it was a great idea at the beginning.
Which is fair, especially when we consider the implications of where did they come from in the beginning? What led them to this? And it's like, well, they were trying to stave off their extinction.
Yes.
By humans.
It reminds me of something you're not familiar with, but many of our viewers will be, from Malazan Book of the Fallen, the Amas, who thousands of years before the events we're reading in Malazan Book of the Fallen.
Those are the bone mummy people, right?
Yeah, they make that decision to go through a ritual, making them basically eternal and undead, so that they can finally achieve their purpose and wipe out the bad guys, the Jaglet.
Be proud of me. I've only fully read that first book, but I understood, I followed, I knew what happened.
There you go. And they did not truly realize what that was going to mean for them. And how at the end, really all they want to do as well is just have peace. That's what they'd really love by this point. Just can it end? But it can't end. They're stuck. Well, and so, similar thing. You go in for something because it's so necessary, so important, and you get far more than you bargained on.
One thing I want to highlight about the Fuse, though, is that they are still people. At least a lot of them are. And so they have their own personal drives. Raboniel was looking for an end. The Pursuer is just a sick, twisted monster.
Nuts, man. Nuts.
He's a little mad and has this one goal of, no, I choose someone that I hunt and I will get them always. And no other goal matters. I don't care. You just let me be a weapon and let me choose who I'm going to attack. And don't you dare get between me.
And it speaks to the challenge that each of these fused has faced. With all this passage of time, how do they hold on to some semblance of sanity? And some of them have they've got the grit, the perseverance to try to achieve victory in the end. That's what's holding them together. Some have other things. The Pursuer, his thing is that he will always win. He will always take out anyone who fights him, and he can't stop. If he was to say, okay, this one, I'll let him go, that's the end of his sanity. He will crumble. That's the thing that holds him together.
But then let's bring in, oh goodness, what's her name? Leshwi?
Yes.
And that section of the Fused versus Wind Runners, and they're kind of like developed this honorable combat, one-on-one situation where they let the rest of the battles just kind of happen because aerial support is terrifying against a ground army, but they've kind of developed this system of, no. We fight honorably in the sky against each other. We will kill each other, but there's respect owed here on both sides, and it is a very interesting dynamic that is not driven from the leadership of either side.
Of course, it's kind of rigged.
Yes.
If they in their honorable combat die, they know they're coming back. And occasionally in the honorable combat, they can kill the other one to a degree that they can't heal. So eventually the Fused are going to win. They know that. So they can take their time with this. They can, have their honor.
Except maybe that's less true post Rhythm of War.
Oh, absolutely. But now I wanted to talk about Odium. Okay, we've got Odium as the first one, and then the second one. We've got Odium as he's the god. Okay, he's in the greater context of the Cosmere, he's a shard. Okay, he's got all this power. he's also very flawed. We get to see the personality flaws in Odium. He's very human. His perspective, his way of looking at things, he can even be slightly manipulated. And in the end, it's how he falls because Taravangian pulls off a coup. And Taravangian becomes the new Odium. That was
that Teravodium.
a huge twist at the end here. You knew Taravangians had some master plan and stuff, but to pull that one off, the
crazy thing is, this wasn't Taravangian's master plan, and yet he can kind of recognize all the steps he was taking led him to this plan. So maybe it kind of was.
It really wasn't something he could just pull off because it required things totally outside of his control, but he was ready for his moment when it happened.
And it shows, for as much as Taravangian has been a schemer through all this, he may yet still just have been a vessel for cultivation schemes. But we'll see.
All I know is in book 5, we get to see how this finally plays out, because Taravangian is a very dangerous person. A very dangerous god. Okay, that was cool. Let's jump back to talk about Venli, because you talked about Leshwi.
Yeah.
Venli is a key part of this. Venli, the last of the listeners,
has been a key part of this for so long, is directly, indirectly, a little bit of both, responsible for the Everstorm being here.
Yes.
Caused this problem, has been left around by Odium himself, basically, to be like, you will win over these Parshmen that have been subjugated and continue to speak for the Parshendi, but not really. You're speaking for me as a puppet a little bit, or else.
Venli so got played. Okay, when we say, responsible for the Everstorm, yeah, sort of, but she was a pawn. She did not know what the final results of what she was doing were going to be.
There were other players involved. There were other things from this world. There were other things and people from other worlds impacting this.
Yes. I appreciated that we get the sign, and this is before this book even, but we see it play out far more strongly now in this book, that you could see Venli has a redemption arc.
And is on her way to a full Night Radiant ship of her own.
And that's it, because it was that early sign. She had a Spren, not the Dark Spren. She has, it was a Void Spren before. No, she's got one of the good Sprens.
Well, let's go a step further. I love that you said not a Dark Spren, even though that wasn't where you were going, because she has a Light Spren with her, chilling, hanging out. Ones that don't often really pick people necessarily. We don't know of any others, as far as I can think of in my head, that have picked, and it seems possible and likely that Light Spren might not want to pick humans, might not want to trust them.
I like how it kind of is played out. Venli's like, how is this working that you're here and they can't see you? I'm not being found out that I have. And I have this image in my head that Timber had a little, boxing match inside of Venli and won and has trapped, and then can hide. I can just hide.
No, every now and then it's just I hold up the little Void Spread and be like, see, it's not me, it's this guy.
And the Void Spren's like, help me. Nothing. Nope. You got nothing, dude. But we certainly do get, through Venli's experience, a much greater understanding of listener culture and the richness of who they were, and how she would love to see any way that she can bring that back. Could she have such regret now?
Where I love seeing that most is a reconnection and this conversation between Venli and Verlaine.
Yes, totally. I mean, right there when she meets Verlaine, she realizes, I'm not alone. I'm not the last one. Here's another one. And so she starts helping him, and this is, she's going against the Fused. She's going against, she's taking a risk here, but it's worth it. And the big payoff, of course, is when they do discover some of the other listeners survived. And that, late in the book, she gets to reconnect. Yay! And we'll see where that goes as we continue.
But it's a hopeful place for Venli in a world and a land that, so far through our series, the only hope we've seen for Venli has been false, has been lies and tricks, and turned out to make situations worse. So we're sitting here going, can this be a hope? Is this redemption? Is this somewhere there? Or are we going to get the rug pulled out again? Is it going to get worse?
Yeah. We get in this book, moving on to my next talking point, a ton of Shadesmar and Spren. I mean, this whole expedition to try to get more of the honor Spren to come forward, to bond with humans, to give us a chance again, which leads, of course, to Adolin's trial, which is one of the greatest moments in the series where the trial ends. So let's talk about that first here. Adolin has come on this mission to convince the honor Spren to give us a chance. And of course, the honor Spren want nothing to do with humans, nothing to do with him, won't even talk to him. And he takes that leap. The only thing he thinks of that can give him a chance, and that's fine. You're judging us. You're judging me for those in the past. Fine, I'll take it.
Judge me. I will be your straw man.
That's right. You may try to prove that we humans are responsible for what happened all that time ago. Go ahead, let's go. And it's a total kangaroo trial. Okay, kangaroo court. He has no shot. He knows it's going to be hard, but he's like, at least I'll finally have a chance to make my case, to talk to the people,
speak. To be and heard. It's like, that requires them to listen.
But he has no shot. He has no idea how rigged this thing truly is. It's a show. Okay. Also that they can finally say, see,
we were right.
We are right. Absolutely. And we're going to wash our hands of ever having to deal with this again. We have convicted humanity. And, it's almost like he's the least person who should be representing humanity because he hasn't bonded a Spren. He has no connection. And yet, he ends up being the perfect person. And it gives us some real hope for the future and gives all the Spren some hope for the future.
For a variety of different things.
But that moment when his Spren, it's a dead Spren, but he clearly has a bond with her when she speaks, when she shouts, and when she just gives that honor, the one who's, running the attack, just gives him a piece of her mind, saying, you will not take my sacrifice, and we get that revelation. They were not killed by the humans. They chose. We chose. They didn't know the full ramifications, we find out. They didn't realize this, never-ending death that they've experienced was going to be the result. But they chose to break the bond with the humans. It was a mutual agreed thing. Wow, that was powerful.
I love all of this so much. And the journey that we've already seen with Adolin and Maya and their connection is one of my favorite relationships in this series.
Yes.
And I am very excited for where it will go, but that's a conversation for another day.
It's really damning for how the honor Spren have treated the dead Spren. Because again and again, they're saying, it goes back to mental illness again.
It's that same parallel of we lock them away, hide them, and we're taking care of them.
But they can't think. Don't waste your time. And we see the result of Adolin treating her with respect, with care, interacting with her. He has drawn out from her things that they were 100% sure were impossible.
Because they believed they were impossible, they were impossible.
Yes, yeah.
But if you believe and invest in people, in non-people, Spren, then a lot of rehabilitation and healing can happen.
Now, again, it's partly realistic in that, I know we're talking in a fantasy context, but realistic in that it didn't just, okay, she talked now and she's alive again and it's all better. No, that's not what happens. But there's an opportunity for more to come, and that's exciting. Now, also in Shadesmar, we get a lot more with Shallan and her coming to grips with her identity crisis, as well as her issue with her Spren.
Yeah.
There's a real tension there for a while until she comes to grips with what's really going on, and that huge revelation that occurs during Adolin's trial that she killed her first Spren.
Turns out you can have another.
You can. Yeah. And it's helps us understand how earlier Pattern was, pretty sure she's going to kill him eventually. Because
she's done it before.
Right. It's like, oh, it makes so much sense now. But Shallan is still such a fragile psyche. And we see that where Radiant and Veil trying to protect her, but also trying to bring her out, especially Veil, trying to put her in the situation where she will confront the past, her repressed memories, that's necessary. And she just keeps hiding again and again.
I still can't decide if Pattern is good and helpful in sneaky ways, or if maybe just a little bit like masochistic, a little sadistic, and a little insane. Maybe it's all of the above.
Maybe it is. But Shallan has a big moment there in the end and does basically come to grips with things. And we have a new Shallan here at the end. We're not going to just see these separate personalities anymore, I don't think. We've got a merged psyche now. Still not totally balanced necessarily, but healing.
Well, that's one of the biggest things that I see and take from all these different things is that healing is not reverting to an original form. Healing is growth. It is something that does not invalidate your previous experience, does not negate any scars, but it is growth to a new point.
New. That's the key. Yeah. You're moving forward to something new.
Like the Robinsons always say, keep moving forward.
There you go. Number 6 on my points here that I wanted to talk about would be Cosmere Implications. And I know this is one of your favorite aspects of Rhythm of War. So you mentioned investiture already.
Yeah.
Talk about that some more. What particularly did you note that excited you or interested you?
So I mean, like, power is power is power is power. And like, we talk about the different ways it can interact and the different things, but usually we just kind of view it in relation to the world we're in. Stormlight Archive is a little bit unique in some of the Cosmere stuff because it has so many different sources of power, because we've got 3 shards in play here. And each one has its own unique things, but they are still playing through in Stormlight or Voidlight. And yet, through this... Yeah.
No, you said Stormlight or Voidlight, or
there's also cultivation stuff that we're calling Lifelight. And so really what we kind of come down to in the end is, hey, it's not good versus evil, and it's not just all the same stuff, but light in this case is the medium for this power.
Mm-hmm.
But it is still diversified, and yet we can learn how to harness it and how to make it interact. And what does that mean? What happens when it interacts?
There's some interesting things, yes.
Yeah, it explodes.
It certainly can. Some things aren't supposed to mix. Yeah. I also, when we're talking about Cosmere Implications, I love that we get much more of Hoid wit, in this book, and understanding that he's involved in some much higher levels here.
And I always love when he directly calls out and says, no, I am aligned with you in this because it aligns with my goals, not because I care about you. And that's harsh, but it's also more or less true. He's on the sides that he is and wants things to play out the way that he wants them to because of how they serve his overall goal. And in that sense, there's a little bit of a connection to Reboniel. We've assigned to good. Is he?
Now, I'm still not, after all these books I've read, entirely clear on Hoid's overall goal.
I don't think we're supposed to be.
But what I got out of Rhythm of War was at least this understanding that basically Hoid is God level. Okay, he's the same as these beings who took on shards, but he intentionally did not accept a shard. He could have. He was right there with them all. He went a different route and now is playing a greater game here for what he believes is best for all of creation. And we'll find out eventually what happens. Not for a while still.
And to some extent, he's definitely a collector. He's got bits and pieces of different kinds of investitures and bonds. He is a Knight Radiant at this point in the same way as other things. He is a Lightweaver, I'm pretty sure.
He makes comment he has very little to worry about. I mean, he doesn't want Odium to know where he is, but practically nothing can kill him. He's made that clear. He's so invested.
Potentially, but not the same that other people have. And yet, the epilogue of this book, because I've read Warbreaker, was huge to me. Because we know Wit is Hoid. We know he's been there. We know what's going on. And yet, after a little interaction with Odium, Taravangian Odium, Taravangian's able to, take something from him. And
oh, yeah.
I know from reading and stuff, it's investiture. And he loses out on some of what he's got. He loses his perfect pitch from that. And it's just like, I didn't know that could happen. What's going on?
Yeah, that's a great scene. And it's like, Odium's like, oh, I gave something away. Okay, let's redo that. And just resets the whole thing. And Hoid has no idea of what just happened to him. And it was great.
That's where Hoid definitely has more going on than a lot of the players in our story, but he's not invincible. He is not fully at that same god level.
And the key thing that we have already learned about Hoid through other things, this is the one area he's really vulnerable if somebody screws with his mind. We see it in, have you read Trusts of the Emerald Sea? I mean, we see it on full display there. So that's the one weakness that he doesn't really have a protection over if the right person with the right power comes at him. Let's talk about rhythms. Okay, Rhythm of War, right? Rhythms and music as power. Okay, we've got, the singer culture that was all about rhythm and hearing the rhythms and then the different kinds of rhythms. And then we've got, we discover that the Stormlight, Voidlight, Lifelight, these things also have rhythms.
They have frequencies of their own.
Right. This was fascinating. This is one of the more creative aspects I think Brandon Sanderson brings to this series, to be able to now look at his magic system in a new light, in a new way.
I need to make clear, I don't know physics and science well enough to be upset with anything that goes on in this book, because I think it applies scientific concepts and not always necessarily 100% correct, but I don't care. It applies concepts that I'm familiar enough with to think it's cool about the applications, but it's fantasy. It doesn't have to actually work.
But understanding now what Navani discovered with Raboniel, kind of working with her there, but Navani is the one driving this. We've got some knowledge of ways to impact the magic that's like game changing. This is gonna be huge in the next book and probably the rest of the series then, since there's supposed to be 5 more books after this. I'm fascinated. I want to see what Sanderson is going to do with this.
I'm excited.
This could be the secret to how we're going to end this conflict. It's going to be tied to these rhythms somehow.
Or this will be something that ties into what makes it a bigger problem.
Okay. Another point here in this book, we finally get to see someone reach the 4th ideal.
We do.
Just about go splat.
But it's not that going splat or the risk of going splat is what's needed to get to that 4th ideal. It is a little bit what is needed to break through to Kaladin that he can't save everyone.
Yeah, I mean, that was the problem. Kaladin, it hints at it very early in the book.
It hints
He
at it
should have
in
already
Oathbringer.
achieved the fourth ideal. Yes, he should have already achieved it. He himself is holding himself back. But I get the sense we're also understanding that's true in most cases. There were plenty of people who don't reach the fourth ideal because they just can't accept a truth about themselves or something. Something holds them back. But when that hits, when he finally, all the little Sprens start turning into shard pieces. I mean, it was like, what a moment. And then to see how he's able to fight with a living set of shard plate.
And the fact that it's not just shard plate is something that you have and wear and it makes you better, but no, it does all that. And all the things you can do with it that you can't do with the shard plate as we know it. It's like, no, it comes and it goes and it replaces and you can send it off onto other people.
Basically, it's fighting with him. He's not fighting with it. It's doing its own things to help advance what Kaladin's trying to do. That was incredible.
It connects him into this world and the power that suffuses it to another level, to a higher degree.
Yeah. I loved that scene. I was just going, yeah, all through that. First time I read it, and then even more so on the reread, because I understood at a higher level what had just happened, what was really going on. And it was also, Kaladin's dad. There are times I'm just so mad at him, and at other times I'm like, okay, well, you're just being who you are. I get it. But when Kaladin saves him from that fall, and they have just a brief moment there, and I'm like, oh, it almost makes you cry, oh, finally. There's a moment of real acceptance I sensed there.
For me, and I need to put a disclaimer on this, that I enjoy my relationship with you and we have a good relationship as far as I'm aware.
As far as I know. You're not selling drugs on a corner or something I don't know about,
No, but I like seeing this dynamic of a father and son and some disagreement, and some of the biggest disagreement in there being, to me, a father and son needing to recognize that they are more than what their relationship to each other is, but that each other are their own individual people who get to make their choices.
Yep.
And Kaladin needing to accept his father and his standpoint in things as being something separate to him that he can't change, that this isn't just his father, it's also Lirin. And Lirin also needing to accept you can't control and tell your son he needs to follow and see the world the way that you do, because he is his own person and he's grown into this, and you can choose to accept that or not. But if you want to hang on to the son part, you need to kind of accept that he gets to make that choice.
Yeah. This book again brings an emphasis on moral ambiguity that we've seen throughout the Stormlight Archive, but also how that applies in leadership. Dalinar's leadership is something he struggles with in this book. He's trying to do the right thing, but sometimes the right thing is hard to discern. It's not always crystal clear, especially when they come to fully understand they're the bad guys. We were the original bad guys. That's a big flip, and then trying to still decide how do I unite? How do I bring us all together when we don't have that same moral compass?
You don't have that right to claim that you are in the just position when your position was not originally just. It does not mean that you don't have a right to exist now, but you can't just claim that the other side is wrong when their start is from trying to exist and you being an invader.
Exactly. So that was a fascinating element that's in this book that I appreciated. I also I appreciated the fuse. We've talked about them before, but all the different nuances, the motivations that they have, understanding that they come from a place where, as you said, humans were wiping them out. They had to make a choice to defend themselves, and that, they're not just bad guys. It's not that simple. There's so much complexity here. And do they have the right to be now, trying to dominate humanity and put things back the way it should. There's a case to be made. But anyone who seems to get in power seems to end up corrupted, going too far, making extremes. We got to find some balance here, people. And I think that's what the end of the book suggests. We have a chance now. Because what do we have in Irathiru? We've got humans and some of these Voidbringers, the Parshendi, who are going to be teaming up now. We got to find a way to work together here. And there's going to be something different that I think is going to be more powerful.
And this is why so badly I wanted the direction they were leading things to go. I wanted it to happen. I wanted R'lain to be able to bond the sibling. But that wasn't possible, a la fuck Moash.
Yeah, we haven't talked about Moash here in this one. We're not happy with Moash.
And yet, I so hope that whether it's by the end of this next book or by the end of 10 books, I secretly hope for a redemption arc. Not really, but like secretly, just so that one day we can enjoy how much we hated this character and have to begrudgingly go, were we wrong for that?
And we're going to do our speculating in another episode. But, I would not be shocked if there comes a moment where Moash is finally confronted with the truth that he went the wrong path, and he'll be able to do something that maybe self-destructs for himself to help Kaladin at a critical moment. And like you said, one action is not redemption, but there could be something.
We saw at the beginning of this book, Moash more or less has already made the realization maybe this was the wrong choice at times. But he's accepted it and spent the entirety of this book really trying to prove and force Kaladin down that path too. To say, maybe I was wrong, but maybe if I can prove that he also is going to go this path, maybe I'm not wrong.
Yeah. It's something that Moash in the back of his mind is probably hanging on to is history is written by the victors. If he can just ensure that things work out and the side he's thrown his lot in wins, he'll be known as a hero for all time. He'll be known as, somebody who made the right choice. Yeah. That's the only path he has left as he looks at it now. But yeah, the last point I want to talk about is just, we've got epic battles again in this book.
Yeah.
The Siege of Irathiru. How this comes down and all there's a lot of death. How we have all of those Radiants who just, a switch gets flipped and they all drop basically, except for Kaladin and Lift, and then sorta Teft. That was fascinating. We see that Teft was close as well.
It's where people who have reached certain levels of ideal, and it's another one of those moments of like, it sucks so much what happens to Teft.
Oh man.
Because he, in a similar way to kind of Elokar,
is
on the cusp, going further, being more, and to a certain extent, I think Teft almost has an easier time than Kaladin does accepting some of the problems and moving forward through ideals. But we do get to see Teft has his own personal internal struggles, and they're very different from Kaladin's. And yet they still are just as inhibiting.
Yeah. It's a sad ending for Teft, but dude's a hero. He goes out fighting.
I'm it's sad, but it's an empowering sad.
Yeah.
The more terrifying sad is the killing of a Spren.
Yeah, certainly. But I did appreciate, with all that Teft has struggled with, he goes out on a high point, really. He has overcome, he is doing what he can do, and he falls. Okay? It'll happen. It can happen to anybody. But way to overcome, Teft. It sucks that you end up the one that loses, but
and instead of breaking Kaladin like Moash hoped, it ends up being what's needed to push him further.
Yeah. Now, Navani and the sibling. Okay, we've got this whole thing that's been going on where the sibling, the only reason the sibling is even communicating with Navani, and turns out others, is out of fear that the sibling is going to be basically destroyed, completely
The
corrupted.
desire for self-preservation.
Yes. Nothing else would have caused the sibling to reveal herself. And so we end up with the sibling bonded to Navani out of self-preservation. It was the only option left. And I love that they're going to have a relationship moving forward that is not all roses and sugar. You know, this is going to be still this developing struggle, just like Dalinar has
and the
with
Stormfather.
the Stormfather.
Both the bondsmiths we've seen have very tense relationships between that bond.
Yep. Yep. Constantly needing to prove themselves, to work to build trust, build a relationship. With the massive amount of power that comes from being a bondsmith, I feel like that's a leveling thing. It levels the playing field a bit because, you know, Kaladin and Syl don't have that kind of thing. Kaladin just has to, you know, honor his oaths and everything's fine in roses. But he doesn't have nearly the power of a bondsmith.
And there's a little bit of the thing of, do they not have that issue? No, but they do need to continue their relationship and work on that. It's just Syl's motivation is more on trying to help Kaladin be better than it is on trying to make Syl better.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much, I mean, the crux of Rhythm of War. We do have 10 days. I mean, basically, this next book is going to be 10 days, I think, you know, leading up to the actual showdown.
You have to remember, I'm like, is it 10 days or was it 10 days and now it's only like 5? I forget. I have to look. It's not a lot of time.
No, regardless. It's not a lot of time. It's really shocking that, okay, we got Odium to agree to this. And it's going to happen in 10 days. Whoa, what? Oh, yeah, there's no time to prepare much of anything. What's going to happen in Wind and Truth? It's going to be big. I'm looking forward to it.
And we'll talk to you more about what we're looking forward to, what we think might happen in another episode.
Which we're not going to give you an absolute guarantee of when you'll see it, other than it will be before Wind and Truth comes out the first week of December.
Yeah, so we've got a limited time, but still plenty enough.
That's right. I'd say expect to see it in November. That would be my guess. But I think that's where we'll leave them here. Hey, guys, if you enjoyed this talk about Rhythm of War, we sure hope you'll let us know. Hit that like button now. And if you're not a subscriber, we'd love to have you join us. You like new subscribers, right, Zach?
Yeah.
Yeah, see? It's that simple. And if you hit that notification bell over there in the corner, as we drop more episodes, you'll get notified. We got tons of stuff coming out all the time. Some of it with Zach and I, some of it with me and other guests, a lot of it with just me sitting, talking into the void because I'm bored. No, that's not true, but I do love bringing content to you. So that's where we'll leave you for today. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time.